Hello everybody, my name is Anthem Sirens, and I want to talk to you about RWBY, specifically its newest season, Volume 9. By the way, this video will contain spoilers to all of RWBY, you have been warned. But first, I would like to give some backstory since I never really discussed RWBY on this channel before. I've been a big fan of RWBY for a long time, since the days of Volume 1. The year was 2013, and I was first starting my weeb phase, and one of my friends was a big fan of Rooster Teeth at the time. He posted in a Facebook group a preview showing Team RWBY jamming on instruments with a dinosaur. My first initial thought was, this is what the show is about. A girl band and a dinosaur. But I watched the first episode and became hooked on it. I fell in love with the show. Heck, everyone in high school at the time loved the show. Controversially, as the years went by, I even really enjoyed some of the post-Monty volumes like 4, 6, and 8. I really didn't like Volume 5 except for maybe the ending, and 7 I thought was just okay. Also, if the series ends, and depending if I'm still doing YouTube, I might make an entire RWBY retrospective video. So with that piece of backstory out of the way, let's talk about Volume 9. It sucked. It was awful. I didn't like it. Where do I even start? Well, I guess I can talk about the things I liked about this volume. The animation is good, the models look nice, and I like the design of the Curious Cat. The Ever After is really colorful, making it seem like a children's book come to life in the RWBY world. Heck, even the music is awesome as well. Sure, Jeff Williams left RWBY to work on other things, but I think Casey Lee Williams and Martin Gonzalez knocked it out of the park on this one. The opening track is a banger, and the song that plays during the chess fight is also a notable highlight. And I also like Jean's Rusted Knight design. I also thought the Curious Cat was an interesting antagonist. Hell, a lot more interesting than Neo. Not only is the Curious Cat really neat looking, hell, I almost considered buying a shirt of them. But their personality is very condescending, mysterious, at least in this volume's beginning, and straight up manipulative. His expressions are great, and his voice performance for Robbie Daymond is just a chef's kiss on this character. And their backstory is a lot more empathetic and understandable than the other RWBY villains. Wow, Anthem, I bet you actually like this volume and are using the negativity bias as clickbait! Hold on, you conclusion-jumping hooligan. Let me talk about the plot. The plot, in my opinion, is the absolute weakest aspect in this volume, and in my humble opinion, is where the entire writing just really falls apart. RWBY as a show in general is very flawed, and many are quick to point out some of the odd writing decisions, which is understandable. I personally never had too much of a problem with it. I know some flaws here and there in the writing, but nothing to completely ruin something entirely for me. Anyways, here's the basic rundown of RWBY Volume 9. It is set immediately after the Volume 8 finale. Team RWBY and Jean all fall off a magical bridge into a mysterious place called the Ever After, which is literally just a ripoff of Alice in Wonderland because this show is very heavy on its fairy tale inspiration. RWBY and co must now go up to a mysterious and magical tree and escape the Ever After while encountering various creatures and entities and maybe learn a thing or two about each other. RWBY Volume 9 can be best summarized as 50% meandering endlessly and 50% stuff that is actually relevant. The first 4 episodes are just exploring random parts of the Ever After, only ever talking about things that happened in previous volumes. Heck, we have a scene where Team RWBY visits a caterpillar who sends the team into a hallucination of seeing their previous selves with their Volume 1 through 3 models updated into their current animation software. The weird part is, while there are some brief mentions of important factors that could affect the characters in this volume, the rest just feels very unnecessary, almost like filler that never need to be there in the first place. The plot only really gets going until around like the 5th episode or so. The Curious Cat brings up the concept of ascension, essentially becoming a new version of yourself by having the previously mentioned tree come to you. It's honestly a confusing concept, but it only ever makes sense by the end of the season. The main theme of this volume, as stated by RWBY, which is the crew that works on RWBY, is identity. And while they delivered on this theme, I don't think they handled it well at all. Like, they kind of dabble in a little bit around the first few episodes where it only really happens to RWBY, and the rest of their team is just like, yeah, we already figured out everything of our characters before. Let's move along now, please. That is one of the issues of this volume, that in terms of story, Weiss, Blake, and Yang had no real reason to be in the Ever After. They have nothing to gain except for keeping the formation of Team RWBY and tying the knot on Bumblebee. Weiss already made amends of her problems, she knows how she will use the Schnee name, and has made her resolve with her family, especially after Jacques' arrest. Blake already solved everything by dismantling the White Fang and gaining respect among nearly all the Faunus. And Yang? Well, she didn't really have much of an arc, to be honest. It was just her finally coming to terms of her new arm in Volume 4, and it also implies that RWBY may not be her little sister anymore. Basically, there's nothing left to explore with Weiss, Blake, and Yang. They simply set stuff up with RWBY and even Jean. RWBY's problem is that she doesn't feel worthy of being a leader, and her plan fell apart in Volume 8, and she is put into more despair after learning Penny is dead, courtesy of Weiss telling her, And Jean, well, what the hell hasn't he gone through? He lost Pyrrha, he had to kill Penny, and he couldn't beat Cinder twice. Jean is hurt. And they emphasize his troubles by further making him stranded longer in the Ever After by some really confusing thing where he just grabs a clock fruit and then turns back time so far that he is trapped in the Ever After, thus creating a time paradox where he ages up and becomes part of a fairy tale. Okay, well, the way they set up Jean this volume is kind of weird, and I didn't really like it that much, but, you know, I'm going to be optimistic. They can still work something out with this. They can still work something out with Jean. They have a good thing going for this. A man stranded alone with nothing but his thoughts that haunt him for so long. We can do so much of this, and not to mention how he'll have to tell Ruby that he killed Penny. Furthermore, he continues to live in a constant dopamine rush playing hero by trying to constantly save these creatures called the paper pleasers from impending doom because unlike Penny and Pyrrha, he can actually protect them. This volume should have been Jean and Ruby's volume. Jean and Ruby will not only suffer, but Penny's death will strain their relationship. They've been best buds since volume 1, and we have a perfect conflict. But it's trashed and not really explored. Instead, it's all about Ruby being depressed and wow, look at the wonderful, wacky looking things in the colorful hellhole we call the Ever After. Also, Blake and Yang are a thing now. Please ignore that controversy where we mistreat our trans employee. Buy our Bumblebee merch. Saffron Terracotta Arc? Ha! I never heard of them. I actually liked Saffron and Terracotta Arc. They were a good couple. The only time the volume ever explores the topic of Jean and Ruby's relationship being strained and their mental well-being going down to shitter is the ending of episode 7 where Jean and Ruby yell at each other and the whole team. It's not really a fight, but they have an equal amount of frustration towards each other and are in similar positions of having a bad mental state. It's a nice scene, to be honest, and it really does reflect how Jean and Ruby are vastly different characters in some ways on how they deal with failure and trauma. Moving on, we have kind of a subplot with a girl called Alex and her brother Lewis. Get it? Alex like Alice in Wonderland, and Lewis cause Lewis Carroll, the writer. Essentially, they were one of the first humans in the Ever After, and were the inspirations for the in-universe story, The Girl Who Fell for the World, which is the RWBY version of Alice in Wonderland. As this volume progresses, we learn that the story is not as entirely accurate as to what actually happened in the Ever After. Apparently, Alex caused a whole lot of mischief and was just not a great person to either the denizens of the Ever After or Jean himself. Yes, Alex and her brother are in Jean's time paradox, and we learn this through narrated flashbacks. In fact, we kind of learn everything about Alex and Lewis through narrated flashbacks. What about becoming the Rusted Knight? And how did Jean get the new armor and everything? I don't know, it's never explained. John. Hey man, look, I didn't mean it like that, man. That wasn't directly aimed at you, okay? I love you, please. I didn't mean it like that. By the end of the volume, we learn that only Lewis returned to Remnant, but not Alex. She wanted to stay behind and fix everything. Why? Don't know. Guilt, I guess? By the way, her not returning to Remnant causes her to get killed by the Curious Cat. The reason the Curious Cat killed Alex was because they wanted to leave the Ever After, and Alex promised him she'd get him out of the Ever After, but then Alex decides to stay in the Ever After to fix everything she caused, which in turn broke the cat's promise. Why didn't the cat just say something like, okay, I guess I'll wait a little longer, is beyond me. Or maybe go with Lewis. It's also funny how last minute Alex's decision was. It feels like starting a long road trip, and once you are really, really far away from your house, you just say, hey, I think I left the oven on. It's also worth noting that the series shows that Jean apparently holds regrets of losing Alex. Why would he be regretful of Alex even though Alex betrayed him? I guess the need to protect, and the Curious Cat probably said something along the lines of, hey Jean, Alex hecking died and it's all your fault. The point I'm trying to make here is that I felt nothing for Alex. I did not care for Alex and John's relationship. I hated the whole time paradox they got John into, and honestly, I think they could have handled this whole thing way better. The show tries to hammer in the message of being oneself and moving on from failures in the end, but I don't think there was much impact in it. And this is all part due to a really shitty finale, which honestly really killed the whole volume overall, in my opinion. So to catch you up to speed, Ruby drinks poison tea and is sent to the tree to ascend while her friends believe she died. John learns a lesson about failure and moving on, courtesy of Weiss telling him, but man, it doesn't show how much he learned. We'll explain later. Weiss, Blake, Yang, and Jean make it to the tree after Jean decides that it's for the best to go there, and they encounter Neo being possessed by the cat trying to enter the big door portal that leads to Remnant. Jean and the rest of Team RWBY fight the cat possessing Neo while Ruby is in the tree's magical ascension dimension. Hey, that rhymes. Debating on the decision to change herself as a whole because she doesn't feel worthy as a leader. During the fight, the cat is using Neo's body that causes her to activate her semblance to hallucinate clones of a possessed Neo. They create an illusion of Penny in front of Jean to catch him off guard, and an illusion of Pyrrha to strike him pretty hard, but not hard enough for him to get up later. Jean gets knocked off an edge, courtesy of Weiss, and hallucinates Alex of all people saying, "You were never the hero." She also says to Jean, "It's time for a change." Oh boy, what is this change? Nothing. That speech from Weiss was for nothing. He is still held back by failure, as shown by the Penny illusion. He did not have much change at all, and that line of "you were never the hero" had potential to work something out, but it was just used as trailer bait. That whole moment was used to give Jean the idea of getting the cat to stop possessing Neo, burn the tree leaves to create emotional hallucinations. That is what his idea was, which is not a bad idea in hindsight, but did they really have to tease us with what could have been a big change for Jean? Meanwhile, in Ruby's dimension, she hears a flashback from her mother telling her she loves her, and Ruby decides, yeah, I'm fine the way I am, no change necessary, conflict solved. I get what they were trying to do with Ruby and her mom, and it's a nice message, honestly, but this payoff was incredibly cheap. Not just that, but it's also very rushed. Everything just literally resolves itself, and we have a lot of build up to something, but the resolution is not delivered well. I understand if in future volumes they want to further the character's development, but the impression I got from the Ever After is that a lot of development would happen, but it really feels like nothing at all got done. Ruby just went back to being herself via a 1-minute journey, and John's whole ordeal as this volume was his conflict with Alex, which I did not care for and didn't feel like they developed well. Hell, in the finale where Team Ruby and John meet the blacksmith woman, she literally manifests a ghost of Alex who magically turned John back into his younger self as a promise of some kind to fix things. He probably saw his demons like the death of Penny and Pyrrha, and the mere fact he's gonna have to tell Ruby the truth, assuming it still haunts him, and his sword could still be broken as well. Or Rooster Teeth and the crew of RWBY can just sweep it all under the rug. I know he's not the main character, but he's the most consistently well written. Well, that's because he's a self-insert anthem. Yeah, that's bullshit. If you believe Jean is a self-insert, never ever look up Paul Schrader's influence on Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, or what Bret Easton Ellis had to say when writing the book American Psycho. You will flip. Back on topic, the finale was so rushed that they randomly decided to give Little an arc. Yeah, Little, you know, the tiny mouse character that Ruby first meets before anyone else. He's kinda cute. After getting supposedly killed, he ascends into a big buff mouse who only has like 3 minutes of screen time. And honestly, they could have handled this so much better. Like, instead of just him showing up at the end of the fight, why not have him just come in during the fight and actually assist Team RWBY fighting the possessed Neo? That would have been so cool to see. Instead, it's just him showing up at the end of the fight going, "Hey guys, check out my new glow up. Okay, goodbye." Before I end this, I want to talk about 2 more things, starting with Neo. Neo didn't have a lot going for her. Her only motivation was wanting to kill Ruby, and she apparently killed one of the most powerful things in the Ever After, the Jabberwocker. We get small hints to Neo's backstory, which is more elaborated in a book that I've never read but heard was fine. They also set up Neo to be the main villain, but she becomes a red herring, making the Curious Cat the real villain. Neo just felt kind of pointless, and the Jabberwocker was forgettable and bland, the big bad all powerful thing which gets set up in the beginning, then killed afterwards, and then gets a backstory at the end. I even had to Google the thing's name just to even remember what it was. It was just awful handling of what could have been a really, really cool creature. And finally, I want to talk about things getting swept under the rug. Now, this might be a minor nitpick, but I'm going to talk about it regardless. We never know what happens to everyone else in Vacuo unless some weird-ass time skip goes down, which most likely has, but Lord knows how long the time skip will be. I understand budget reasons and everything, but man, it's gotta be weird seeing how long this time skip will be. Maybe Volume 10 will explain what happened off screen, assuming it even happens. In conclusion, RWBY Volume 9 is a terrible mess. It's nothing but constant meandering and only ever really scrapes the surface of what interesting ideas it could have explored. It felt like there was no real focus, no real development, and no real catharsis or anything happening. It's not filler in any way, shape, or form, but it feels like filler. Even Volume 5 had more substance than this bloated garbage. Sure, Volume 5 was boring at most times, but at least it had, in my opinion, a really satisfying payoff. And as much as I really want a Volume 10 to continue the story, I don't really have a lot of hope for it being as good as the previous volumes, considering how they handled Volume 9. Like, there is hope, but it's not a lot. And if Volume 10 does not ever get greenlit, and presumably RWBY does not continue, I would be disappointed, but not surprised. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, dislike it if you dislike it, and comment down below what you thought of RWBY Volume 9, or just somehow want to bash RWBY because apparently the current bias on the internet is that RWBY is bad, which I don't think it's bad, despite me making a video bashing a new volume. You know, it has its ups and downs. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe, please. Feel free to subscribe. It makes me know that people want to see more content made by me. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.